I kill monsters for an interdimensional government. Here are some stories. Part 5. Written by HHeyPeter. Welcome back, everyone. Nice to see that people still want to check in during the holidays. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season this year and got to relax and eat gingerbread cookies for days on end, because I'm about to completely spoil the Christmas mood here with this story. It's the holiday season, so I decided to tell the most Christmas-themed story I had. A couple of things to note with this tale. Since this took place sometime after the last part, the sabbatical that I had was lifted, and I was free to start working again. Secondly, if this part seems to come out of left field and doesn't really connect with the previous parts, well, it's because it's interrupted the plan that I had for updates. I was going to gradually give out my favorite stories and then start documenting the newest hits that I do. But the order's been scrambled beyond belief. So, without further ado, here's today's story. As much as I'd like to enjoy the holiday season, there's a lot of nasty factors that always manage to make me forget the family festivities that I enjoyed as a child, and make me focus more on the cold bitterness of winter. My family's always had it rough this time of year. Without going into too much detail, a tragic death in the family completely shattered any semblance of a family dynamic we had, leaving the ruins of Christmas in its wake. Outside of my parents, none of my family has any intention to speak with me in the slightest when they were willing to attend. Now they don't even bother showing up, leaving our stockings vacant and our mistletoe dry. It was tough to swallow as a kid, but at this age, I'm more or less numb to it. My parents, however, aren't as accepting. I'm sure they hold some type of internal grudge against me, because they're especially cold this time of the year. We don't buy any gifts for each other. We don't take any time off. No tree is present in the house, nor do we really acknowledge the holidays. It's just an extended weekend for us. A cold, bitter weekend. Not that I can blame them, really. It was kind of my fault that our family is as fractured as it is, and I'm long past thinking that I deserve any presents from anyone. Not to flaunt my wealth, but I've got enough money to buy essentially anything that I could reasonably want. It's the small perks like that that makes being a hitman all the more worth it. Needless to say, the holidays are a grim time at the Spears household. It all came to a culmination on the 24th when my mother was hanging up stockings by our fireplace. Now, nothing ever goes in there, so why she puts them up, well, it's beyond me. Anyway, she accidentally hung up my sister's stocking out of habit. It's been years since she died, but that opened the wound nonetheless. My mother was hysterical, and nothing I said reached her in the volatile, angered state she was in. She used me to vent and said that God took the wrong kid, referring to my sister. But I won't hold that against her. She started to throw Christmas ornaments at me in a blind rage, but that didn't hurt too much. My father had to come in and console her by taking her out for a drive to some location that I'm not privy to. This happened more than I would like to admit. Mom freaks out, Dad takes her for a drive, then it's 3 days before I see either of them again. On the plus side, it gives me more time to work and take on hits. But that also means that I have to depend on my lackluster cooking skills to eat meals. One can only eat so many boxes of Kraft dinner before they start to go nutty. After they left, I resigned myself to picking up all the discarded ornaments and withdrew to my room to my laptop, mindlessly browsing the internet until I take my sleeping pill and pass out. Aside from vigorous exercise and the occasional Brazilian jiu-jitsu session that I go to the YMCA a handful of towns over for, it's crazy how many activities you can do there. The village people weren't lying when they said that it was fun to stay there. Anyway, that's about all that I do in my free time. After maybe an hour of watching whatever YouTube chose to recommend to me, I decided to check the mail for any regular packages or bills. I put on my jacket and boots and marched out past the ice and opened the frozen-over mailbox. To my surprise, there was an envelope from Boss stuffed neatly inside, covering a wad of bills that were sharing the mailbox. I wasn't really expecting a hit given to me on the holidays, but I wasn't really complaining. Taking the contents of the mailbox inside, I eyed the page that was given to me. Target 54. Krampus. Krampus is one bad MF. Firstly, he only comes on the night of Christmas Eve, dressing up as a ghoulishly deformed Santa Claus and dropping through the chimneys of unsuspecting families, leaving wrapped presents underneath their trees. Once morning comes, both children and parents alike are surprised to find a present that they didn't wrap. But that surprise quickly turns to terror when the present in question turns out to be a fiery bomb that scorches them and their home. If that wasn't scary enough, Krampus could tear you to shreds without even trying. There are a handful of pictures and well-written descriptions of what the beast looked like, and the thought of him was ghastly. He was about a 9-foot-tall beast with spiky, scaly skin, like a crocodile made out of barbed wire. It stood upright with hooves as black as night. Each one of its fingernails and the horns perched on its goat-like head were a spiraling, twisted mass of nail and bones, snaking in and out of each other like a Chinese finger trap. He wears a cartoonishly contrasting coat to match his cruel twist on Christmas. Santa Claus's signature belt buckle red jacket, complete with a matching crimson pack perched on his shoulder, sagging down to the ground, full of horrid contraptions lying dormant. The report didn't know how he was able to get a hold of such items, but that didn't matter. All that mattered was that I murk him before he strikes again in the evening before Christmas. Sometime later that day, I left my house with my kukri in hand and drove to where I needed to be, a couple of neighborhoods away. The report instructed me that I had to keep a close eye on multiple houses at once, because Krampus strikes totally randomly. There's no telling which house has a bomb hidden amongst its presents until it's too late. I parked my car by the edge of the cozy, snowy town and waited, using a pair of binoculars that I brought with me to give me the best view possible. I switched from scanning the streets to scanning the roofs and sometimes even gazing up at the dark, clear sky, half expecting a grizzled herd of skeletal caribou pulling that monstrous goat Santa across the sky, spreading terror wherever he goes. 1 hour of observing quickly became 2, then 3, and after a while, time seemed to lose all effect on me. It was cold enough to keep me from falling asleep, but the relative comfort of my car seat was genuinely tempting me at that moment. Before I was able to consider closing my eyes for just a moment, the sound of soft snow crunching caught my attention. I peered through my tinted window. Cloaked in the darkness, a monstrous outline of a bright red coat could be seen sulking in the night, lugging around a bag nearly as big as its body, struggling to carry the writhing contents inside. My heart felt like it had been gripped in ice when I saw the beast's hooves in the snow, and I knew at that moment what I was looking at. Krampus, I said in a haze. A sharp exhale stung my lungs as I let out frosty air. Just looking at this creature was mesmerizing in a strange, unworldly way. Watching it stumble in the snow and chafe with the bag it was holding was surreal, with its goat legs and head acting as if it were a man. The pictures I had seen prior to this didn't do justice to this creature's unsightly appearance. The goat head it had looked almost twisted on its neck, like someone over-tightened a screw. Its horns were somewhat obscured by the goofy holiday sock hat that it wore, but the spiraling black appendages still looked sharp enough to slash my skin like wet paper. I shook myself out of my shock and tightly gripped my blade, softly exiting my car from the passenger side and ducking underneath it. My game plan was to sneak up on it and disintegrate its throat before it gets inside, but all the snow around me was problematic. I wouldn't be able to even walk near it without the crunching of snow giving away my position. So I had to take extra precautions. I poked my finger at the snow, watching it dissolve in chunks as soon as I touched it. It crept along the now visible grass. The snow around me slowly turned into ash, and with each step, my heartbeat sped up. As I kept melting a path for me, I could see Krampus starting to examine a nearby house, looking around at its frozen windows and closely prodding at the dangling Christmas lights. Finally, he got an idea and began to scale the side of the house, jabbing his claws into the wall like some type of goat Spider-Man. I managed to reach the lawn of the home when Krampus managed to get himself up on the roof, and then up on top of the chimney. He's really going all the way here. I mean, the chimney? He's not even going to fit, I thought to myself, confused as to why it wouldn't do something easier like just open the door. Krampus's bag was an easy enough fit down the chimney and landed inside the house with a muted thud. Krampus himself, well, was another story. He was far too wide to even begin to fit inside the chimney, so he struggled his furry body against the brick square entrance. While he tried to wedge himself out from the chimney, I carefully grabbed the splinters his hooves and claws had made in the side of the house and scaled it, careful to make as little noise as possible. It didn't notice me as I hobbled on the roof, blade in hand. As I crept closer, I came to the conclusion that Krampus's neck was far too thick for me to grab and dissolve before he could take a swing at me. So I had to put all my faith into my kukri and stab him directly in the head to kill him quick. The sound of his claws scraping the brick and his guttural bleats muted my unsteady footsteps, which gave me a window of time to slash at his skull and hopefully kill him before he noticed me. Quietly pacing towards him, the foul smell of gunpowder and smoke emanating off his jet black fur became apparent, and my eyes began to water slightly. I readied my hands around my blade and went to jab my blade into his skull, but an unexpected shift of his neck slightly knocked me off balance, making the blade scrape against his scalp, drawing a grisly red line along his fur. Krampus snorted in pain, and the whole roof felt like it was shaking. He turned his head towards me, and I got a full look at his slit pupils, now shaking with rage. Just seeing him was uncomfortable, but staring at him eye to eye felt like he was trying to judge if I was worthy of having a nitroglycerin-laced present in my stocking. From the looks of it, I deserved several bombs. He snarled and climbed out of the chimney, brandishing his spiraling claws. I became aware of the howling wind as the two of us had our silent stare down, waiting for the other to make the first move. I, however, was not prepared to have a melee duel with Krampus. Stealth is kind of my bread and butter, and I'm not one to adventure past my comfort zone. Despite the cold, my palms started to sweat as I gripped my blade, anticipating Krampus to make the first move so that I could slash at him and throw him off the roof. My hip toss move wasn't something I've had the chance to practice on another living person, or a goat for that matter, but I'll try my best to do it. Finally, Krampus made a baritone-esque growl and lunged at me, prepared to disembowel me with his claws. I acted on instinct and sidestepped him, managing to slash at his furry claws and position myself beside him, where I grit my teeth and prayed for my hysterical strength to kick in as I grabbed him and prepared to throw him off the roof. I became acutely aware of how much heavier he was than me, but I persisted and managed to lift him off his hooves. I roared with anger as I managed to lift him and threw him just far enough for him to topple off the roof and slam into the ground, where the sounds of snapping bones and bleeding followed. I felt lightheaded and fell to my knees on the roof, feeling the urge to pass out from overexerting myself like that. But I crawled to the edge of the roof and saw the state that Krampus was in. His twisting horns had embedded themselves into the dirt and snow, and he was stuck. He struggled to move at all with his head stuck in the dirt. I huffed and did my best to carefully climb down the roof, using the dents that he had made to hold my footing steady. Krampus started to bleat, which made me worry that people would notice the sound and start to wake up, so I had to act fast. I brandished my blade and jammed it directly into the middle of his skull, which promptly silenced his bleats. He slowly stopped struggling, and his body laid limp in that awkward position, finally dead. I dropped my blade and nearly passed out, the stress and panic of flipping him off the roof finally setting in. After a few minutes of me trying to catch my breath, I came to the realization that I just couldn't keep his corpse out here in the public. I had to get rid of it. Now, normally, Boss disposes of it for me, but I couldn't afford to wait around and guess when he'll get around to doing that. So I paced back to my car and retrieved a can of black spray paint, which I kept inside the trunk. I sprayed a symbol next to Krampus, a symbol that would ensure that my boss would pay attention and take high priority with the corpse disposal. I finished spraying it and threw the can and my kukri into the trunk, and I had to get one last thing from the house: Krampus's bomb-ridden bag. I was thinking about just using the front door if it were unlocked and then sneaking out. But the house he had deposited in had come alive with a flickering light, and my exhausted heart stopped. Through the drawn curtains, I could barely make out the form of a child wandering in the home, clutching something tightly to their chest. I have to act fast, I thought. At that moment, I thought of something so wildly improbable and stupid that it might just work. The fact that a child was the potential witness in question gave me an idea, and I didn't have the luxury of careful planning. I snatched Krampus's big sock hat and finagled his belt buckle red coat and put it on. Both were comically oversized for me, but I wore it anyway. I rescaled the walls and made it to the top of the roof, where I crossed my fingers and jumped down the chimney. It was just like going down a pipe in Mario. As soon as I hit the bottom, I felt the sting of landing ass first on the wood, and I struggled to crawl out of the chimney. The house I landed in was a cozy-looking one. The tree was brightly lit up with a multitude of colored bulbs and adorned with countless tiny framed photographs of a family, a mother, a father, and a young girl. All underneath the tree were presents of various sizes, all of which were wrapped in bright red wrapping paper marked "From Santa." They had a cute little smiley face on them. Given that I had just killed Krampus, the possibility of these presents actually coming from St. Nick wasn't something that I could rule out. I quickly retrieved the bag sitting on the floor and struggled to lift it over my shoulder. And just as I got it to stay, I saw the little girl who was pictured in the photographs on the tree, clutching a plush doll of Santa. Her eyes lit up, even brighter than the tree behind me, and she rushed over to me with glee. "Santa, it's really you," she squealed, hugging me tightly. Now, it's been a long time since I've seen anyone who's reminded me of my late sister, and I was in no way prepared to reminisce on those memories. Regardless, I had put on the outfit for one reason: tricking the kid into thinking that I'm actually Santa rather than a hitman. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had to do it. "Of course, child. It's on this day that I have to deliver presents to all the good boys and girls of the world," I said quietly, doing my best to sound jolly. She looked up at me with glee and eyes full of wonder, an expression that I haven't seen in nearly a decade on anyone's face. "Now, you know you should be asleep by now, right? I must deliver all the presents at night, and this is far too late for someone like you to be up," I said, trying to strike a balance between sounding gentle and sounding commanding. The little girl frowned at me and pouted. "I'm sorry, Santa. I was just so excited," she mumbled. I smiled and rubbed her shoulder. "It's all right, child. Let's put you to bed," I said, telling her to lead me to her bedroom. I put down the bag and carried the little girl to the room she pointed towards and placed her on the bed. She quickly pulled up the covers over herself and put her head on the pillow. "Good night, Santa," she said in between yawns, holding the plush doll close to her. At that precise moment, I felt a rush that I haven't truly felt in years. Like I had rediscovered a sense of accomplishment that was lost to me. Simply giving a child joy was accomplishing enough, but it only hit me then that I had just saved her and her family's lives. Had I been unable to take care of Krampus, they would be charred by tomorrow. I want this, I thought. I want this feeling. It felt fantastic to keep this family safe and happy. But I couldn't help but acknowledge a sense of longing that I had to have the same thing. I wish my family was like this. I wish I could still protect them. I wish we were all together, I thought. I quickly left the room and went back into the living room with the tree. I lifted the sack over my shoulder and unlocked the door from the inside. I closed it and left the house, noticing that Krampus was already gone. Thanks, boss, I thought. I threw the sack into the back seat of my car and drove off, still wearing the Santa suit. When I pulled into the driveway of my house, it was still empty. I felt neutral about it beforehand, but now it made me feel lonelier than ever. I knew it was childish, but I wished I had someone dressed as Santa to comfort me when I was the age of that little girl. I wanted to feel safe and loved, and not feel the weight of me destroying my family dynamic with my cowardice. Where was my Santa? I thought. I solemnly dragged me and my gift sack out. I retrieved my cash from the mailbox and went inside my room. I wasn't interested in opening any bombs, so I left the bag alone and kept it inside my closet, where it sits even to this day. Maybe someday I'll try to open one, but for now, I'll just keep it there. I didn't even check on how much money I had got for killing Krampus. I just threw the envelope into a box I kept under my bed and took off the oversized Santa gear. Well, I'm sorry if that was a little melodramatic for a Christmas story. I like to try and capture what I was feeling at the time, and that time of year is never a happy one for me. I'll see if I can get the next part out soon, but no promises. Again, I wish everyone a happy holiday. Stay safe, everyone. Jamie.